Hello there, my name is Michael Willer. I'm a game enthusiast, game designer, GM, and basically just fan of all kinds of different games, but especially role-playing games. I'm starting this channel with my co-designer, Matt, and we wanted to do a little intro video, kind of show you guys, like, you know, in my case, I wanted to talk about the first time I got into game design, and it was a lot younger than I actually realized until I started thinking about it. And then we realized that he actually has a really similar story that we hadn't shared with each other. So rather than me just monologuing, I wanted to kind of record that conversation and share it with you guys so you can get a sense of who we are and what it is that we're wanting to bring to this channel. You know, as a kid, I didn't have the easiest time making friends, and usually I would just get way too invested in whatever it was that we were doing or playing with, and then other people would kind of get bored and move along.
Sure.
And sort of exemplified in the, do you remember everybody collecting Pokemon cards for, 3 or 4 years in 1999, 2000?
Mm-hmm.
So I
probably have some in a drawer behind me.
Yeah, I wish I still did. I collected, and my dad got rid of them without asking me after I moved out, and it still hurts. While everyone else was just collecting and trading cards, I was actually going to the local game shop, every Friday night and making my decks and playing Pokemon cards and winning booster packs and just having an absolute blast. Did you find some? Nice. When I was in the game store, kind of waiting for games to go, I was wandering around and looking at all of the different games they had on the shelves. And I was maybe 12 years old, and I saw that they had these really cool looking figurines in big sort of appealing packaging, and these were Warhammer 40,000, because I didn't know what the hell it was at the time, figurines for a game that I'd never played and never heard anyone talk about before, and I really wanted to play it. So this is sort of it wasn't pre-internet, but it was being able to just look up anything on the internet. You couldn't necessarily just learn whatever you wanted to yet. And so what I did was I took I had a massive tub of Legos, and I dumped them all out, and I started building my own units. And it was little infantry figures and vehicles and terrain, and I wrote up a set of rules by hand on college ruled paper, and I had my ruler and my dice. I don't remember what the rules were exactly. I don't know how close I got to actual Warhammer gameplay, but I had my best friend over at the time, had him over, and we played, and I was in seventh heaven. I could have played literally all day long. We were sort of blasting a Smash Mouth album and playing, this faux Warhammer game on the floor of my room for probably 2 or 3 hours. And by the end of it, he was
very
just
Y2K.
Totally sets the stage. It was, I forget the name of the album, but it was the one with the orange cover. My friend, he was so patient with me, but after 2 or 3 hours, he was just can we do something else?
Yeah.
But that was I was so upset. I truly could have done it all day. I just was having the time of my life doing that.
And it was a thing you built yourself, which is awesome.
Yeah.
I think both of us came to TTRPGs, later in life, in adulthood. But I did have the benefit as a child that I did have not Lego, but lots of action figures of all kinds.
Yeah.
And I had also younger siblings to act as guinea pigs. So to this day, my brother still speaks very fondly of the custom games that I would design for him that were basically sort of turn-based, squad-based tactical games. So I give him a roster of characters to choose from, and he'd build a squad and then send them out to battle whatever robots I had cobbled together to be the opposing force. In some of the more elaborate versions, every hero figure that he was choosing would have a stat sheet with ability ratings and speed and strength and armor and whatnot, and progression trees where they could unlock new powers and get their other cool weapons.
How old were you for this?
12 or 13.
Yep.
And then, and my brother would have been 7 or 8 at the time. And so just like,
that's
just
awesome. Good on him for
out,
sticking with it. I love that you basically designed XCOM.
Yeah, I had no idea XCOM was a thing, or like, I think I had maybe a vague sense of the Fallout games, which were similar. And, you know, like I had played RTSs, but obviously that was, you know, real time was impractical for our purposes. So make do with what you have to create the game you want to play.
I find that fascinating. It is incredible to me that we have been working on this game for 8 years and didn't know.
We never talked about this before. Yeah,
it's never come up. I mean, but it makes so much sense, because to do what is functionally like a long-term, massive scale creative project, you need kind of obsession behind it. Like it has to be kind of just ingrained.
That deep-seated neurosis of like, I need to finish this. I want to see this made real.
And I can make it better. That need for like, okay, we made a thing. Let's try it out. Okay, that was fun. How could it be better? How can we optimize? How can we, you know, try and perfect the imperfected?
You gotta love building those rules, you know, populating those lists. That's definitely my thing. That looking back, it's like, oh yes, I see where it all started now. Like, I love me a good list of cool stuff that you get to choose from.
Yeah, that totally speaks to our sort of like primary design styles, I guess. Yeah, where like we both do everything in the game. Like we both have hands on all aspects of the game.
Right.
But you tend to take the lead on like that kind of stuff, like feature design, like specific things that or lists of options for characters. I tend to focus more on like systemic, holistic design, like sort of big picture.
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And we are very good at, you know, checking each other's work when it's done. But in terms of going off and doing the stuff that speaks to us, like I love, you know, you tell me we need a list of items and I will give you, you know, 50 of them.
Yeah, so many options.
And then you just, you know, have your big brainstorms where you'll come back and be like, hey, look at this completely new way we could look at, you know, doing attacks. And
hopefully it's fun.
Right, exactly.
I think that was what really, so for anybody watching who's kind of like, okay, how does this apply to me? They're, you know, as co-game designers, we're not, you know, I think it's one thing to kind of sit in your office and work on a solo project. And that requires a lot of like self-motivation, but you're also only bouncing ideas off yourself, or maybe you're getting other people's advice sometimes, but it's still you working on it. And for a long time, that was how I made the first couple iterations, or really the first iteration of Space Thieves, was the first couple years kind of working by myself and then bouncing ideas off people, but mostly just trying to do it myself. And I got stuck. It was actually a list of things that needed to be completed. It was all basically our magic system. Yeah. I had all of the themes and I had kind of the first structure of it for one piece. But like a whole bunch of stuff needed to get generated from it and done in a way that was like creative and very well fleshed out. And I ran out of steam. And at some point asked Matt, like, hey, can you help out with this? Would you want to do that? Yeah. Not knowing that is kind of like right up your alley.
Right, exactly. I'm like, yes, it is the start of the pandemic. I have nothing else to be doing right now. I just sat down for like a month and a half and wrote 200 new spells.
Yeah, and just in a very complex fashion too. I mean, that original system was incredibly robust.
Yes.
Like the customization, because we wanted a system that felt tailored to each individual, that you could use things in ways that you felt your character would, you know, even if it was the same theme of a spell, it could be customized in a bunch of directions. Right. And yeah, that system was just so well fleshed out.
It was very well fleshed out and completely impractical for the kind of game that we ultimately wanted to be playing.
Yeah, but unfortunately, we had to respec that. Last summer, we sort of did like a ground level refresh of the entire game. What we discovered with that, I'm sure this will be a different video at some point, but the spell system with that level of customization, we found that players weren't remembering what their options were because there were so many variables.
Yeah.
And so it felt like, how can we find a way to keep a sense of customization? It'll probably have to diminish, but that there's still a sense of like scaling and things getting bigger and more powerful as you get bigger and more powerful. But then in a way that would allow players to use them quickly and not necessarily have to retain all of the conditions in their working memory.
Figure out 5 or 10 different little pieces that they were slotting together to create the effect they were trying to create.
Yeah. Players have different strengths and weaknesses, and you sort of have to pick as designers, like, who is our audience here? Who do we want to serve? Because you're not going to make everyone happy. There's
right.
no, there's no game that makes every single person who plays it equally happy. And so we sort of had to pick, like, okay, I, as a game designer and a lover of role-playing games, tend to remember rules better than most average players. I retain stuff because I'm obsessed with it, and it's a primary passion.
Yeah.
But my ability to remember rule sets pales in comparison to yours. Like, yeah. What is it your group calls you?
Consult the Book of Matt is the
right.
the refrain.
And I think that's phenomenal. And it's an interesting. It certainly helps incredibly when you're designing the game, because we've been through so many different versions of our rules that we're not just remembering one handbook that's already long and fairly complicated. We're remembering potentially like 10 different versions of the game.
All the previous incarnations.
Yeah. And that's the design direction we ended up going after sort of last summer, and kind of working through how we wanted to reconceive the systems of the game. Was like, can we make something that feels and is deep and strategic and robust, but that plays relatively quickly and intuitively?
Right. You're not buried in a million options that you have to figure out every time you want to do anything.
Yeah. And a primary design decision that, at least as far as testing has confirmed so far, has gotten us there, is having a large portion of the decisions you make about your character done during character creation and level up. Or sort of like behind the scenes, so that once you're actually sitting down in a session, you've already made all of your big, like, oh my God, I've got so many choices kinds of decisions in your own time, if you want. And then you can actually just play what you picked.
And I think that kind of conveniently splits the difference between our interests in creating as much stuff as possible, as many cool options as possible, while still giving players who are in the game playing it, the ability to have a sensibly sized repertoire of tricks.
Truly. And this makes even more sense, having, again, like, heard the story about how you design games for your siblings, and I did basically the same thing. Like, I think there's a core to our design philosophy that is, we want people to play this game to and have fun playing it. Like, which sounds kind of obvious, but I don't think that's always the case with people who make any kind of art or creative experience.
Right.
Oftentimes it is purely self-expression, and if people like it, great. If not, I don't care. And I've even seen, like, I don't know that this is like common necessarily, but I have seen in online spaces people designing experiences because it's how they feel a game should be, which I think is good, because you're coming at it from your personal perspective. But there's a core element of, okay, but how is that going to feel to the people playing it? And that's why we pivoted. I mean, we had a version of Space Thieves that was basically a ripoff of 5th edition, and then the OGL disaster happened. We pivoted into kind of a hodgepodge of our own rules and some D20 style rules. And that became kind of the complex, very sort of heavy duty version of the game that ultimately we looked at the player experience, and it felt like what we were imagining was not actually what was happening at the table. And it didn't feel like the themes or sort of narrative ideas or class selections or any of that stuff. It didn't feel like that was the problem. People had engaged with that very quickly. It just needed a set of mechanics that were easier to use and more streamlined.
That's definitely a case of, sort of dead end evolution of the game. We kept adding more, things that we thought that we wanted and that seemed cool in principle, but it just wasn't, because it was built on foundations that weren't leaning in the direction that we wanted.
Yeah, and I think part of that is applying a very rigorous test to anything new that comes in, which is this overlapping with an existing mechanic? And if it is unique and distinct, is it adding gameplay that we find to be essential or just kind of cool and extra? When you're applying a sense of rigor to like what gets added to the game, you also have to look at like, okay, is there something already in the game that needs to come out to make room for it? Because people are going to have to try and remember this stuff. Yeah,
that sort of feeling of, okay, here are all of the things that could conceivably exist for any kind of story you're trying to tell in this setting. And at a certain point, like, you kind of need to decide more selectively, like, what kinds of stories do we want people to be telling?
Yeah.
As opposed to just giving them the tools to do absolutely anything they want.
And I think that really comes down to, again, this will probably be its own video entirely, but in short, taking last summer to really figure out, what is this game? What is it trying to be? What are the core themes? What are the gameplay styles that we want to make the heart of it? Which is how we landed on Scrappy and Cooperative. We wanted a feeling that you were always hitting above your weight class, even if you have incredibly powerful character builds, that there was always going to be a sense of we're having to push ourselves. That's where Scrappy comes from. And then Cooperative being that we love that feeling of team cohesion when people come up with like combo moves that aren't listed in the handbook, but they work that way in practice. Or bespoke rules that are specifically about working together as a team to just create a sense of we as a crew are doing this together. And you kind of get to capture that, like, in my head, it's always Star Wars, because that's just my, that's my nerd origin story.
Sure, absolutely.
But it's that like Rebels versus the Empire, like we are few, but we are special. And if we work together, we can overcome anything. And once you start ruling out other either types of narratives or other gameplay styles in favor of prioritizing that, well, it's not like you can't play other types of games in this system. Sure, you could, but we want to make sure that what we're asking people to remember about our game is consistent with that, so that you can kind of keep it in that narrative headspace. That if you want to tell like a pulpy sci-fi science fantasy story, we're the game to go to.
Fulfilling a specific type of fantasy.
Exactly. We have so much more to talk about and share with you. We've been designing our game Space Thieves for over 8 years and playtesting it for the last 5. There's so much we've learned in that process that we can't wait to share. And if that appeals to you, then subscribe and join the conversation. We're highly engaged in this community on our personal channels, so this is really just making it official. We're not just here to talk about games. We're here to help you make them, and make them good. We'll see you in the next one.